Good evening, everyone. I am not Nick Araya. I am Cale Royer with TreeStuff.com. Araya? Araya, Nick Araya. Why did I say it like that? Anyways, welcome to our webinar on palm trees, adjusting your work to reduce plant disease and increase climber safety, or the acronym, never mind. I won't try that. Before he gets to talking, I have a couple things that I get to say because I don't usually get to talk. That is Nick's job. So first things first is that we have a current promotion going on. If you go to TreeStuff, you will see a scary little video graphic there. If you use the code SCARY, you get 15% off almost everything at TreeStuff.com. There are a couple exceptions. Sorry, the kid's home with me today. It's Bring Your Child to Webinar Day. The other one is that we have some other interesting promotions going on. You can see at treestuff.com/and-then. That will take you to a page that will show you a couple different promotions we have where if you buy something, then you will get emailed a coupon later on for like $100 off your next purchase of $300 or more. So go check those out. If you already need one of these things, then it's perfect. Great for you. You buy it, you get something free along with it. The next thing is that we have another. Thank you. We have another webinar on the books coming up November 14th, Proper Pruning, a #RateMyPrune live experience with Lindsay Purcell. So make sure that you're here for that. I'm currently having problems with Facebook streaming. So YouTube, I'm talking directly to you right now until I can figure out why Facebook isn't working. So we will be live on both of those once I contact customer support for my streaming program. The only other thing that I have to talk about is the #RateMyPrune thing that we have going on. At the top of the TreeStuff website, you'll see a little bar, and there's win $100. Each month, we pick a winner of the judge, of the people who have gone through and judged Rate My Prune submissions on that page, not on Instagram or on Facebook, but on that page. Each month there's 4 new submissions that you get to rate. And if you rate them, then you are entered to win a $100 gift code for treestuff.com. So go check that out. You can enter every single month just by rating. So without any further ado, I'm going to switch it on over to Nick Araya with his presentation about palms. Nick, I don't have your full screen right now.
You will in 1 second. Bam. Now you do. Okay. All right, everyone, strap in because we are going to do a 4-hour presentation on date palms. Just kidding. First joke of the night. So here's what I have for you guys. I was kind of walking around LA doing the thing that I do as a consulting arborist that runs a tree service. And, part of my job is to learn about palms. I'm an arborist. I'm from Wisconsin, but 20 years ago or so, I moved to Los Angeles. And whether I like it or not, I have to become one with these palms. And so I started noticing a lot of issues that were special to one particular type of palm. And as I was trying to kind of make sense of this information, I realized it'd be a great presentation. So that's what brings us to where we are today. So I'm following along on the YouTube. I have it over here on this screen, so I might be able to see some of the comments over there, but I'm going to focus on what's on my screen instead. Oh, sweet. I wonder if I can get both of them up at the same time. That'd be cool. Anyways, so thank you, Cale, by the way, for getting that. Up and running. Watch live video. There we go. Now we'll try to address things live if possible. So where I'm going with this, I realize there's such good opportunity for a presentation that it's kind of specific because I'm going to focus mostly on Canary Island date palms. But I think there's a lot of lessons in here that could apply to all the palms. And also, let's be honest, I know that 90-something% of arborists in the world don't work on palms and may never ever work on palms, or they'll do it once in their life. So I've put this presentation together in a way that you'll just learn about trees while we're doing this. And if you're a young kind of budding arborist, you're just going to take some lessons away from this presentation that will help you in the management of all trees. So without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about my company. I know a lot of you guys follow me on Instagram and you know a lot about my company. We are a weird company. I think it's fair to say that. We have about 20 people in the company, and I think 12 of us are certified arborists. 2 are board certified master arborists. We have a bunch of people that have track. We have some tree climber, certified tree workers that are climber specialists. And so many, like, we really love getting all these feathers in our caps. And it has created this kind of market in LA, or not created, but it's catering to a market of people that really want to make sure their trees are getting done the right way, and they want to make sure that it's actually arborists that are doing that work. So we're not just tree toppers, but we do get stuck doing work that we don't like doing sometimes. That's business, but we really try to look to the high-end stuff. Kale, it looks like it's frozen. Is it just on my side? Is it good on your side for me to start? Oh boy. Let me text Kale here. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. Turn that off. You want me to close this window and restart it? The rendezvous? Okay. Okay. I got the second. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I think we have unglitched it. So this is, we're on slide number 2 right here. So it's just, you didn't miss anything. So before we get into some of the nitty-gritty details of the date palms, I want to talk to you guys just about palms in general. So let's get into it. Starting with good old William Shakespeare. Let's talk about how we talk about trees. Canary Island date palm, that's a common name. It's also called a date palm. Sometimes people call them a phoenix palm. And I've heard it referred to as a fruit palm. In other countries, they probably don't use any of those words because they speak foreign languages. And all of those names are correct because common names are kind of built by the people that are, the language that's being used in a particular area. Phoenix canariensis, that's the botanical name, or sometimes we call that the scientific name. And that, when we write it, that's Latin, and we write it in italics, and that signals to everyone that we're talking about a botanical name. And that botanical name is one we can fight about, because if you see a palm and you're not sure if it's Phoenix canariensis or Phoenix dactylifera, each of those 2 different types of date palms are only one particular kind. So you can't say, oh, this is what we call it where I'm from, because if you do, then you're doing it wrong. So anyways, in italics, and it's Phoenix canariensis. And notice the second word, the C, is lowercase, and that's important. That's how to do it the proper way. So Is it a grass or is it a tree? This is where I think the jury starts to get really divided. And I'm going to share a perspective with you. And let's see what you guys think about it. You can put it in the comments if you disagree or not. Palms are monocots. And most of the trees that we're working on, they're dicots, dicotyledon and monocotyledon. A lot of people will say, and I see Jason Dudek in the comments already pointing out that a palm is really like a grass. It isn't a tree per se in the sense that they don't get annual growth rings. They can't compartmentalize damage when you cut into them. And that's kind of what makes a tree a tree. But then I would, on the flip side, say, well, who does the work? Because some of these palms will grow 50 or 100 feet tall, and grass is managed by the gardener and with a lawnmower. And you can't ask a gardener to go up a 100-foot palm when they're not trained to do it. The person that's going up a palm to do, maintenance up there, that is an arborist. And what do arborists do? They work on trees. So it's kind of this gray area. And the other thing I would say, my last bullet point there, you can see it just says the word language. This is kind of like the common names of trees. When I worked in Wisconsin, we had silver maples, and some people referred to them as soft maples. And then I heard people get in fights about it, and I was young, so I just kept my mouth shut. And I learned they were both right, because one guy was from an area where they called silver maples soft maples, and the other guy was from an area where they call it silver maples. I'm from an area where everybody, if you go door to door and point to a palm, they will not call it a palm, they'll call it a palm tree. They almost always put the word tree on it. And if you come to my crew, which is a very hoity-toity, tons of arborists on the team, and ask them that question, they might say, well, technically, blah, 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 it's a grass, it's a monocot, and it's not able to compartmentalize, it doesn't put on annual growth rings, it only grows taller, it doesn't get fatter. But if you go to the job site and just sit there and listen, they're constantly referring to palms as palm trees. So you're going to hear me through the remainder of this presentation. I will refer to them as trees. I'm not sure in my heart if I fully believe it's a tree or not, but what I do know is that the language day to day with most people that we're interacting with, if you refer to them as trees, they know exactly what you're talking about. So that's my little soapbox issue right there. Sound off in the comments if you disagree. This is how big these bad boys can get. This is a Canary Island date palm. It's the biggest one that I know of in the state of California. It's the listed champion. It's 120 feet tall, and it's not too far from where I'm sitting right now. And that's kind of crazy. If you think of, like, there's some states in the country that don't have any trees that are 120 feet tall. Or most of them are not 120 feet tall. And this is kind of normal for these Canary Island date palms. Then the bottom of them, this is kind of a weird situation going on at the bottom. You can see I'm standing in a lawn there next to this champion tree, and the bottom section, what we would refer to maybe as a root flare, it isn't a root flare in the traditional sense. It's referred to in books as a root boss, and you probably want to remember that later if you came here to get a CEU. But it's referred to as a root boss, and honestly, I have no idea where that comes from. But like BOSS, boss. And what I've noticed is that date palms that are growing like kind of in a back corner of a property where they're neglected, that root boss appears to be suppressed. You can see this date palm is in a fresh lawn, and if you look right around my belly height down, it has like a white color to it, and that's from constant sprinklers irrigating the base of the palm. And so what I've noticed, and in fact, if you look at it, you can see grass growing up the palm trunk down at the bottom. So I think what is happening, and this is a hypothesis, and maybe it's written in a book somewhere and I haven't found it yet, but I think that areas where there's a lot of water going at the base of the tree, the date palms are reacting by thinking that that's a place they should grow their root system. So all the way up to my height, almost 6 feet, 5 feet, 10.5 inches up the trunk of that tree is actually just roots. And if we were to cut into that, you would just see, hundreds or thousands of thin little root kind of tendrils in that area. And then inside that is an actual trunk of the palm. So if you look at the top left, you see a Mexican fan palm, and I really don't like those. They're so tiny. But look at this Canary Island date palm in the middle with the ivy going up the trunk. They can get almost 40 feet wide. And if you think of a shade tree in someone's yard, especially in Los Angeles, 40 feet can be big enough to shade the entire backyard. And, we've got arborists and landscape designers out there planting crepe myrtles as shade trees. And this date palm here can provide way more shade than a crepe myrtle could, except maybe like a big, giant, awesome crepe myrtle. But let's be honest, most of them aren't. So most palms aren't really thought of as providing a ton of benefit to the community as far as like urban cooling or shade and things like that. But these date palms can get big enough that they, or usually are big enough. It's not that they could conceivably do that, like that 120 footer I showed you. Almost every date palm is 30 to 40 feet wide. And if it isn't, specifically the Canary Island date palms, if it isn't that wide, then that means there's something wrong with it. So let's keep going here. And I do want to say you're welcome while we're on this blue screen here. A lot of people on Facebook and the YouTube comments are just saying thanks for taking the time to put this together. You're very welcome. And Jason Dudek is commenting on my flannels. I had a blue one on earlier, and I thought this one looked better, so we went with this one. Okay, so this is a big kind of buzzword that I think all arborists only kind of understand, and I'll put myself into that category as well because it's pretty complex what the apical meristem is doing. So I think if you walked onto the average job site and said, "Hey, anybody here know what an apical meristem is?" most people on that job site are going to just kind of disappear. There might be some hot shots that are ready to do it. And I think if you find the ones that think that they know what it is, I'll say, okay, show me the apical meristem, and they'll know to point at the top of the tree or maybe way out at the end of a branch, or they'll tell you it's in the roots down at the end. The apical meristem, let me put the Wikipedia definition, and I don't like to read whole slides to you, but I'm going to read this one to you because I think it's kind of heavy, and then we'll go through, we'll take it from there. Cells in the meristem that can develop into all other tissues and organs that occur in plants. These cells continue to divide until they become differentiated and lose the ability to divide. So let's think of it like this. It isn't the thing you see at the top of the tree. You can't see an apical meristem just standing there looking at a tree. You got to slice it open and get out a microscope. But you've got a cluster of cells that are in an area, and they don't even know what they are. And they're like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" "I don't know. I don't know. What are any of us doing?" And they just keep multiplying. And then this is the part I don't understand. At one point, one of them starts to turn into a part of a leaf or a part of a flower bud or something like that. And I'm not sure what triggers that, but then all the ones in that area become that thing. And so when we point to, imagine like a Colorado blue spruce, it comes up to a point and you can see the tippy top of it. you're not seeing the apical meristem, but when you're pointing up there, you're pointing in the right area. But so where was I going with this? So it's kind of like just inside there, and the same thing down in the roots. It's down inside the roots and not something that we see if we were to dig into the ground and pull it out. So in a palm, and I'm going to show you a different species of palm. This is a queen palm. If you look at the one on the left, there's this weird kind of spike, this tall one that's a little bit frizzly, I think would be a good name for it. It's like starting to fall apart. And then if you look to the left of that, there's one tiny little white spike. And most of the tree workers that I know would refer to that spike, that initial spike that's coming up, as the apical meristem. So I want to say this because it's clear that it's important that we're clear on the language. And I think there's two languages. There's like the nerdy, like making sure everything we're saying is clear with the science. But then there's this also day-to-day language on the job site. And so if I have climbers that are setting a line over the top of a queen palm in this case, on the palm on the right, they can't see what we're referring to as the apical meristem, but they might say, hey, careful, you don't want to take out that spike at the top. They might also say you don't want to mess up that apical meristem. Now, for people that don't know how palms work, ignore the apical meristem for a second. If you look at that skinny white spike on the left palm, way at the top, that thing's a really tight bundle of leaves. And then off to the right, there's a thing going to an angle. That is the previous spike that's just starting to open up. And that will open up and become an entire frond. And that's what we call palm leaves, frond, F-R-O-N-D. That might be on the test later. So write that down so you don't forget. So that frond will open up, and they'll start out at upward angles, kind of going up, let's say at like a 45-degree angle, and they'll open up and be almost full sized. And then over time, the next spike will push up, and then it will start to open up. And then those 45-degree angle fronds will get pushed out a little lower. And then a few months later, another spike will come up and open. And those ones that were almost horizontal will start going downward. And then once they start going downward in an ideal situation, if you look at the frond on the, the palm on the right, and then look at the left side of the palm on the right, you notice that frond is starting to turn yellow. It's not a disease. It's turning yellow because the palm knows, or the frond knows, this part I don't know, but it recognizes that that frond is about to die and fall off. And so it's literally pulling chlorophyll and other nutrients up through itself and putting it back into the head of the palm so that it can use that energy to power flower production and the creation of new fronds, which is super duper cool. After they go yellow, they turn brown. And then that's where the arborist needs to know what species they're dealing with and how it reacts. Because here we have some queen palms that are like 60 feet tall, and those fronds will just fall, and they come down hard and they'll crack windshields and stuff like that. It's right next to the street. So this client does pay us annually and sometimes twice a year to go up and take out all those dead fronds just for safety, not to manage the actual health of the plant, just for the safety of the people around the palms. So that's on a queen palm. What about MF palms? That's the Mexican fan palm. That's our code language when I'm writing notes at our company. And it might have another meaning as well. But if you look at the Canary Island date palm in the middle, and then the Mexican fan palm to the left, you can't see that spike at all. It's up there. We just can't see it from ground level. But when we're setting a line in these palms and we're trying to shoot a big shot over the top, or hand throwing it, we do have to be mindful of where that apical meristem is, because we do want to minimize or totally avoid damage to that apical meristem. But fear not, I want you to be able to see what it looks like if you were up there. And I can't take you there, but I can fly with a drone. So we're going to do a technological experiment here. And I'm going to hit play and see if this will run and you guys get to see it. So that's the brand new spike. And on a Canary Island date palm, that spike is really tiny and short. In the queen palm, it was standing up really tall and kind of showing itself proudly. And here it's hidden and protected and almost feels like it's subordinated. But that will, you can actually see the pattern of the leaves on there just getting started. And to the left, you see the newer spike getting ready to open up after this one matures a little more. So that is pretty cool. Let's keep going. I hope that video worked. It worked on my screen. I hope it did on yours. And let's see, I'm just looking at the questions here. Jason Dudek is right. Palms do sound evil. They seem like it at first, but like anything else, the more you get to know about them, the more friendly they become. Or at least that's what I tell myself. Okay, palms do identify as a male or female. And this is important in understanding the management of the palms. So if you look at the left and look at the right, the one on the right has these brown and orangish clusters that are kind of inset inside the palm. Those are the seed or the fruit clusters. And those fruit clusters on a Canary Island date palm can have like a few hundred, maybe like 200 seeds, fruit on each cluster. And just from this one perspective, I can see about 10 clusters. So, you know, a couple thousand on this one. And that's just the ones we can see from this perspective. You go around the other side of the tree and there will be more. Coincidentally, the fruit is edible. When you go to the store and buy edible dates, what you're getting is coming from a canary palm. The ones we're looking at and focusing on today are the Canary Island date palm, which is the Phoenix canariensis. And we don't really buy those at the store. The ones we're buying are Phoenix dactylifera, which is just referred to as a date palm or a fruit palm. So anyways, but those seed clusters will drop over a slow period of time. They'll drop like individually all those seeds. And so if you have a client that just bought a new house and you know that they like to keep everything super tidy, then you can tell them, look, I can tell that you have a female Canary Island date palm. We're going to have to go up there regularly to take that out because the mess down below is just god awful. The fruit are maybe like the size of a small or medium-sized grape, and they get messy when you step on them. They stick to your shoes. You track them into the house and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to know that. And then you look at the one on the left, and it doesn't have those brown clusters. It's not because anybody has cleaned them. It is just because that's a male, and it doesn't create the fruit that the females create. So females fruit, males don't. That might be on the quiz. So what is it that palms want to be growing in so that they can grow disease-free? And I'm going to go back to these queen palms that we looked at a few minutes ago because it's a pretty darn good example. And let's zoom in on the bottom. And what you see is a lot of mulch. They love being around mulch. I showed you one previously, or two now. No, one that had lawn going right up to the base of it. And the needs of a lawn are at odds with the needs of a palm. And there are folks that'll say, well, a palm is a grass. but you don't manage it like a grass. It has its own management needs. And this is part of my argument of maybe we can just go ahead and accept calling them trees, because their needs are more similar. Their irrigation and water needs are far more similar to most trees. Now, I'm in Los Angeles. Palms can grow, especially date palms, kind of along the whole bottom of the country. We'll see them in Texas and some of the southern states, and then obviously tons of them in Florida. Florida and most of the Southeast gets tons of rain almost all the time, so they probably are never irrigating their palms. We're in a much drier area here. Some people refer to it as a desert, but it's not a desert here, but they refer to it as such sometimes. And I think a lot of folks affiliate palms with tropical trees. And in the tropics, it's kind of like Florida where it's raining all the time. So I think people just assume that you want to water your palm every day, every other day, every 3 days or something like that. And the reality is we don't want to do that. We want something here. This person paid to have a typical Southern California drought tolerant landscaping put in. Those plants that they have at the bottom is a plant called Ceanothus. It doesn't like being overwatered at all. There's also a little sage plant there, which is something we find out in the chaparral. And so they do have drip lines in this area, and it's irrigating once every couple weeks, maybe once a week in the hot part of the summer, and then once every couple weeks during normal warm times of the year. And then starting right about now, it's almost November, they're going to turn that irrigation off completely and hope that Mother Nature can provide the irrigation for this tree until about May or June of next year, and then they'll kick that irrigation back on. So that's a lot different. If you think of some folks who are watering their lawn in Southern California, they're doing it like every 2 or 3 days all year long for 8 to 15 minutes at a time. That's how you encourage fungal growth in woody plants like a tree. It's also how you encourage fungal growth in a palm, which is non-woody plant. So moving on. This is a palm disaster right here. If you look at the trunk, you can see patches of green where there's like algae growing on the trunk. The algae isn't hurting the tree, but the algae is signaling to me as an arborist that they're creating an environment that's suitable for algae to grow, which means they're also creating an environment that's suitable for fungus to grow. And algae, not a problem. Fungus, definitely a problem. So when I see a situation like this one, I'm typically pushing people to think of this as like we need to make a little drought tolerant island around this tree. And we try to push our clients to go, a couple feet out at least and remove that lawn that's right up and literally growing between the trunks of these two trees that are touching, and then backfill that area with, if it's got to be gravel or stones, if that's what they want, that's better than the lawn. Mulch would be preferred. Bare dirt would be not bad at all. Bare dirt would be better than stones or grass, obviously. And it's a really hard fight to fight, because usually if a palm gets a fungus that's going to kill it, it kills it quickly. So by the time the client looks up at the palm and contacts me to find out what's going on, it's already too late. But if the palm looks okay, but I see these signs showing, they look up at the palm and go, well, it looks fine. And they're less inclined to take action on it. So it's a really tough road. It's hard to navigate. And sometimes I kind of have to really push, hey, I'm the professional. You're paying me money to be here and educate you. And I really think this is important. And then we go from there. But let me show you what can happen. And we're going to use queen palms as an example, because nothing shows it better than this example right here that's more common in queen palms. So here's another, this is a row of king palms, and their irrigation is going up. Look how high up. It's like going 15 or 20 feet up the trunks of these trees. And now here we are looking at a fungus, and I don't think you can hear the, what do you call it? I don't think you can hear the narration. So I'm going to explain what you're going to see, because at the very beginning, something cool happens and you might have to kind of watch closely. I'm going to peel a little piece of bark off the trunk. And when I do that, you're going to see a puff of fungal spores go into the air. The bottom, and you can see that it's a really beautiful example of pink rot, where you can peel the bark off of it. But you can even see all those spores in the air right there. So we're going to come and remove this tree tomorrow. We wrap it up with paper to encapsulate the spores. So this is a fungus called pink rot. You do not have to remember the botanical name. I just think it's such a big, long one, and it's kind of funny to, I don't know, just, it's there if you want to Google it later. It's important to know that pink rot is a secondary pathogen. And so what you were seeing there is not simply the fact that water was spraying on the trunk of the tree, and then a little spore landed on the tree, and then the fungus took over. In order for something to be a secondary pathogen, and this applies to trees and all plants, all living things, I think that the concept of a secondary pathogen is that it isn't powerful enough usually on its own to do noticeable damage to its host. So in this case, we have a tree that was stressed by something else, and that could have been construction workers had some leftover stucco mix and they just threw it over there, and that burnt some of the roots on the palm. It could be a nutrient deficiency just because there's so much lawn in the area. It was pulling all the nutrients out, and now the palm is struggling just to survive. And then the fungal spores came onto the palm. So we started, here's a photo of it here, kind of a close-up photo. And you can see that fungus, I think in this photo, you can see where the bark is peeling, almost like a birch bark peels. And the fungus is inside under the bark. So it is something that is starting usually on a wound outside the tree, and then it goes in and wraps its way around and kind of peels the bark off. And as it's going around the tree, it's also going in the tree. And so when we are managing this fungus, what we're doing is saying, hey, you got to get this one out of there. We can't make it come back. I know that's why you called me. But we'll tell them we got to take that one out. But if I come up to this with a chainsaw, spores are going to go everywhere. And no matter how good of an arborist you are, you cannot look at a palm and tell me which ones will or won't be susceptible to an attack by a secondary pathogen. So we treat it as if every palm in the vicinity is at risk of getting pink rot. It might not be true that they all are. So what we'll do is we'll wrap the trunk of the tree. We wrap it up with cellophane, like saran wrap, or we'll use brown, what do you call it? Craft paper, this brown paper bag material, and we'll buy it in a roll and literally wrap the whole trunk, which sounds preposterous, but it's the best way we can think of to control the spread of those fungal spores. And then we're not cutting them with the chainsaw. We're cutting through that with a handsaw. This particular palm right here is barely 10 inches in diameter, but a queen palm can get like maybe 14 to 18 inches in diameter. I should look that up, huh? So we'll wrap that up, and then we have the Katana Boy handsaw, which has like a 2-foot blade on it and really big aggressive teeth, and we'll do the cutting with that, and that just really suppresses the spread of these spores. And then that wrapped trunk piece gets cut in the biggest pieces we can manage. And that's simply because the more cutting we do, the more exposure there is to the spores. And then the crew will carry that and not put it in the chipper, because that's going to blow the spores all over the neighborhood. We'll either throw it in the back of a pickup truck, excuse me, back of the pickup, and then it'll go to a dumpster. Or if it's wrapped in paper, we'll put it in the back of the chipper truck, not in the chipper, but in with the chips, if it's going to go to a green waste recycling facility, where it will get mixed in with all the other green waste in Los Angeles and composted, and the compost will, kill the fungus basically. So that kind of just shows how this can work. And I'm going somewhere with this that I'll explain after I have a drink of water. Jared just asked a question. Sorry if I missed it. What's the primary pathogen? We don't know. It's really that it's taking advantage. Another way I've heard it is an opportunistic pathogen, which just means it's waiting for the opportunity of the host to be weak enough that it can actually grab on, that the pink rot, the fungal spores can grab on that trunk. So, and then Jason asked water or Starbucks. Rest assured, I only support small, locally owned coffee shops. So yeah, for the folks on Facebook, I am seeing the YouTube comments. So that's what you're hearing here. If you're not sure where I'm getting this from. Okay, where was I going? Oh yeah, so that question though, what's the primary pathogen? Well, it needs two things. It needs a weaker host, and it needs an entryway. And even though palms don't have bark in the way that a tree has a bark, it does have an hardened outer layer that provides a level of protection to it. So a good way to transmit pink rot or other fungal diseases into the palms would be, let's say if we weaken the palm by constantly over pruning it. And I'll tell you right now that when it comes to the management of palms, there's a desire by many people, and I think I'd go so far as to say most average people, they understand that the expensive part of the management of the palm is getting the arborist on site and getting them up the palm. Once they're up there, whether they're cutting 3 fronds or 23 fronds, the price isn't that much different. So in their mind, they think of it like, well, I don't want to have to pay you guys to come out here every single year to do this. So why don't you just take a ton of the fronds off and just leave that little spike at the top? That way you don't have to come back year after year after year. And that is such a bummer of a way to manage a living thing, because what that's really doing is it's just like topping a tree. You're taking away the palm's ability to do photosynthesis, and you're keeping it in a stress mode. And I've seen time and time again in Los Angeles, there are properties where they are over pruning their palms because they think that is, in Florida, they call that the hurricane prune. And it's not really doing anything to make it more hurricane proof. Like, palms are so hurricane proof already. But what happens is it puts the palm in a stress response mode. And I see those property managers pruning their palms on an annual cycle. Well, guess what? Our clients are having their palms pruned, and we're taking off the dead fronds, we're taking off the seed pods, and maybe we're taking off the yellowing fronds, and we're doing that once a year or less, or like less often than that. So the amount that you take off isn't what dictates how often it's going to be that you have to prune it. So this is just like a huge soapbox issue. Like part of me says, I'm not a fan of Mexican fan palms. I think we have too many of them in Los Angeles. And I think it'd be better if we took a lot of them out and use that space to put in even other palms or other plants that are more beneficial to the community at large. So let's just let them die. However, we have them here. They're an accepted part of our community. And I think that means that we want to take care of them the right way. So if you're going to have it, you might as well do it right. So that's my thought on that. So back to where I was going with this, though, is if you are consistently over pruning your palm, you're weakening it, you're presenting an opportunity for fungus to take a hold of that palm. Well, the people that are doing the over pruning, they're typically climbing with pruning spikes. And what do pruning spikes do? They puncture through that tough outer shell that the palm has, which we'll call it bark. It's not really bark, but they're puncturing through that bark layer. And you can see after someone has spiked up a palm, you can look in and you go, oh, well, there's the living vascular tissue. It's right there. I see it. It's fresh. It's got that like yellowish, whitish, green color that we're familiar with when we cut into a lot of living trees. So now there's a hole directly in the vascular tissue on a plant that isn't capable of compartmentalizing. So fungal spores will get in there because the other neighbor across the street just hired a cut rate tree company and they're chainsawing fungal spores and throwing it through the wood chipper. And now you've got that opportunity for a fungus to really set hold and multiply inside of the palm. All right. That's a lot of talk about pink rot. The reason I went down that deep with it is because it really sets the stage for the management of a lot of the palms and frankly, a lot of plants and trees that we manage as well. So, all right, let's get going here to the next disease. And this is a big disease. And there's a reason why those two letters are on the screen, because this is one that goes specifically into Canary Island date palms. Not specifically, but it really hosts well on that palm. And it will take them out completely. The queen palm that I just showed you that picture of, that one was a king palm. It has a small trunk diameter. The whole palm was about 12 feet tall. Frankly, we took it out and that area looked better. When a date palm comes out, it's a huge loss because you have a 40-foot canopy that hosts a lot of wildlife, which isn't necessarily good for the arborists that are going up to manage it. But if you look at this head of the palm right here, these fronds, some of them are green. The ones in the back left corner are totally brown, but then there's some in the top middle that half of the frond is green and the other half of that same frond is brown. And that is from a disease called Fusarium wilt. And Fusarium is a fungus. Remember that, Fusarium fungus. Fruit, female, FF. But this is one of the telltale signs of Fusarium wilt. And specifically, that's Fusarium oxysporum, in italics, of course, because that's the botanical name. So Fusarium is operating differently than the pink rot. The pink rot, we could see it on the trunk and you could see it spreading in that area. And it's very easy for us to understand kind of how it's functioning and just like tearing apart that one section of the plant. Fusarium operates more like a systemic treatment that we would give to a plant, where you put it in at one location and then it moves rapidly or whatever speed throughout the entire plant. So here it's inside the palm and it's showing itself in the fronds out at the top. Yeah, and Raymond says he's seeing a lot of that in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County. It's definitely up there. We have a lot of it. We have a lot of Fusarium in Los Angeles. It's, we see it in every neighborhood in Los Angeles. Orange County, I see it. San Diego County, I see it. All the way down to the border of Mexico. My wife and I just went on a trip to for our anniversary trip a few weeks ago. I see some folks saying a picture would help, but I've got the picture on the screen. We're going to move to the next slide. Maybe that will fix the problem in a second. But anyways, I didn't see signs of Fusarium down there, but it may be that I just wasn't traveling around enough to see it. So here is a place. Yeah, thank you, Tommy, saying he's seeing it in Florida. I don't have. Hey, can you guys tell me what picture you're seeing to make sure? Is it the one with one palm in it, or is there something else cute in the photo that lets me know you're on the slide that I'm on? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. No problem. So if you look at this cluster of palms right here, the one right in the middle, it's kind of mixed in and hard to see, but right at the end of the rainbow, there is a palm with a shrunken head on it, and the fronds are basically brown. And then if you look to the right a little bit, the palms on that side are turning a little bit yellower. If you go to this intersection, and you can do this later, if you write this down and remember it, you're looking for the intersection of Rosecrans Boulevard and Redondo Avenue. And if you street view that intersection, it's really cool because all four corners of the intersection all have a dozen Canary Island date palms. And they are doing their best to manage Fusarium wilt disease there. And you see all these varying stages of the Fusarium wilt at this intersection. So here's the way this plays out. I get a call from a property manager and they've got a few palms, and I show up and let's say I see this. I count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I count 9 palms right there. And they say, hey, there's a problem. Can you save our palm? And the answer is no. I cannot save that palm. It's so far gone that it's not coming back no matter what I do to it. We can put a bunch of stuff into the soil that it could uptake. We could inject it straight into the trunk. We can spray it onto the crown of the tree. There's other ways we can treat them too. I'm sure I'm just not thinking of them right now. It's not going to help that palm. But what I'll tell them is kind of like, you didn't really know this, but you didn't call me here to save this palm. Your other 8 palms are at risk. And if we do nothing, what happened to this palm is going to happen to the other ones, and you're going to lose them all in a really fast timeline. There's a really good chance that several of these already have Fusarium. So we're going to talk about some treatments that can be provided to the palms in a little bit. But before we do that, we're going to talk about prevention, because that's where we can really help. Most of the palms that our company sees and works on are showing no signs of Fusarium and no signs of it in the neighborhood. So I have no reason to believe that we're managing a potential Fusarium patient. So prevention is really the thing that will allow your clients to maintain their palms the longest. I heard someone say eventually every date palm will die of Fusarium, and our responsibility is to extend the life of those palms by minimizing the impact of the Fusarium, or postponing the impact of that Fusarium. So rule number 1, and this one really hurts because there's a lot of work to do up top. Don't do it with a chainsaw. It is so tempting because obviously chainsaws are really fast, but it's really easy to cut into the vascular system of palm when you're using such a powerful tool. So there's a value in slowing down the work and kind of forcing yourself to use a handsaw to make sure that it minimizes the likelihood of you accidentally cutting into the vascular system of the palm. Sterilize your handsaw. At our company, we're doing that. We do that every day before we work on any property. But if we're working on Canary Island date palms, we're also doing it between every date palm because of the high likelihood of it hosting Fusarium. So we're doing that with a stiff wire brush, and we're just kind of brushing off the thick debris. Sometimes we'll use a razor scraper to scrape gunk that's built up from the work the previous day. And we use a product called Spray 9, and Nora Bryan was the one that told me about this product, and it is amazing. It does such a good job. At our company specifically, they have a version of it called Earth Soap, and that's the one that we provide to the crew. It's not quite as powerful as the full Spray 9, but it definitely does the job. And Spray 9 is a degreaser. It's a very powerful cleaner. It's used in hospitals to kill diseases on work surfaces and stuff like that. And then after we do a clean with the wire bristle brush and the Spray 9 Earth Soap, we'll rinse that off with isopropyl alcohol. We use the 91%. Some people prefer the 70, what is it, 70%, I think is the other one you can buy. And it's literally just watered down. They're both watered down different amounts, and one will evaporate faster, and the 70% will evaporate slower. The isopropyl alcohol is kind of like the icing on the cake that gets what the Earth Soap may have left behind. And I kind of like, I'll hold my handsaw and spray it on both sides, and then I'll rock the saw kind of up and down so that the isopropyl alcohol, the rubbing alcohol, is kind of dripping into all the nooks and crannies between the teeth. It can be hard to get inside there. So that's the way we're sterilizing our hand saws. Then this is the big one, and this is also challenging. Can't climb these palms with spikes. And for years, when I first moved to LA, I was taught prior to that we don't spike prunes. And then I got here and they're like, oh, no, you can on a palm because it's not a tree. And I was like, oh, awesome. That actually makes sense. It's a monocot. So it's not even trying to do coated. What they didn't tell me was just because it's not doing coated, that doesn't mean that decay can't happen. And so we were still doing that damage. And just kind of rolling with it. I can tell you this, most palms will not show immediate decline from having been climbed with spikes. And I know that that is a true statement that nobody can argue with. Most of them will tolerate it. But I also have cut down trees that had pink rot that was spaced evenly with the pattern of the pruning spikes. And I've seen other fungus growing out of pruning spikes up the trunks of Mexican fan palms. And now I'm a much more educated arborist, and I understand how microscopically tiny a Fusarium spore or a pink rot spore can be. And so we educate our clients. ENP is putting on Facebook, should you not use a chainsaw at all when pruning a palm? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. The truth is, we need to slow down the work for the sake of the palm. And this is a huge mind shift that I think the entire arborist industry needs to accept. Because right now, what anyone who works in an area that has a lot of palms would say is, but Mr. Nick, I would never be able to sell a palm pruning job because what you're talking about would cost $1,000 to do a Canary Island date palm or more when a lot of people in my area are pruning them for $200. Or a Mexican fan palm, we do those for, you know, a few $100s, and the gardeners are out there doing it for $75. So if I need to make money, I've got to, I need my crew to move fast. And the fastest way they can do that is not sterilizing anything and running up the tree as fast as they can on a pair of spikes, and using a chainsaw. And they better not be at the top of that tree for any more than 3 minutes before they get their butt on the ground and get into the next palm. That's how we're looking at it. And it's creating this, you know, the race to the bottom, pricing wise, and also safety standards wise, and also plant management wise. So I'm really lucky because when I started my business, I did not have a love for palms. They were just like something we got to do. And so it made it very easy for me to set rules for our clients that, hey, look, I know that most people are charging you this much to do it, and our price is this much, but that's because they're willing to let you accept the risk of what happens at that lower price. And we're not willing to do that. So here's my price. And as a result of that, I'm giving my crew time to set a line with a big shot, or sometimes we come out with a drone and set it with the drone. They're climbing up the rope SRT and not going up with spikes. They're working slower when they're at the top because they don't have spikes on, so it's harder to get your footing. They're relying more on a foot ascender and a knee ascender to kind of give their foot a place to be. There's a lot more work with the lanyard, like getting good positioning, because you can't just scoot yourself over to a good spot and really firmly anchor your feet. So Mike Honcho is asking on Facebook, how practical are the Swiss tree grippers for palms? I'm going to say they're super practical if you're in a place where you're climbing mostly the same diameter of palms and they have mostly clean trunks. I don't think they're practical at our company because we're constantly climbing trunks of varying trunk diameters. And so it's a lot of adjustment on the palm. But I've talked to people that use them. And for folks that don't know, these Swiss tree grippers, it's a metal band that goes around, and it's almost working like an ascender on the trunk itself. And it's got a little spot that you put your foot on, and you just get two of them and you just kind of like inch your way up. It's frankly, it's really cool. I think in Hawaii, for example, there are companies that will do thousands and thousands of coconut palms every year. And that's a really good case for those Swiss tree grippers, because it's kind of like you set it to one size, every trunk is the same diameter. And Tom is saying in Florida where he is, it's $30 to $50 per palm for trimming. And you can make money doing them for $50 if you're spending 4 minutes per palm. And I just choose not to do that. And I want so badly for the whole industry to follow us. And little by little, I see more and more people out there throw lining into palms and SRTing up the palm. And I think we're going to end up in a situation where we have a certain segment of the arborist market is saying we will only do it this proper way. And then there's going to be a middle group that is going to tell people, we'd like to charge you more to do it right, but if you don't want to do that, we'll do it cheaper for you and just do it the bad way. And then there's going to be a group of people that will say, oh, that's ridiculous. Who cares if it dies? We're trying to save you money. Here's our price to do it super duper cheap. So I think that's where we're going with it. And then the other one is the minimal pruning of the live growth. Every frond you cut off, if it's green, you're weakening the palm and increasing the likelihood of it's opening an entryway for fungus and bacteria to get into that palm. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. And then that leads us to this concept of shaving the pineapple. And this is something that, to my knowledge, is basically just on Canary Island date palms. And I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. The basic idea is when you're cutting off a palm frond, it leaves what kind of feels like a stub. It's where the frond connects to the trunk. There's like a widened base at that spot. And so when you're cutting it with a handsaw, you're going to naturally go out a little bit so you have room to fit your handsaw in there. With the chainsaw, you can kind of just force your way in because you're just, cutting in as you go. So in really upscale properties, you see this a lot at resorts and golf courses, and some people are willing to spend the money on it at their residential properties. They will very meticulously shave the bottom of the head of the palm, where the live green fronds are coming out the top, and then you have what's called the pineapple at the bottom. Dave is mentioning the boot. Yeah, that I didn't know if that was just a slang term we used at our company. After you cut the frond off, you throw the frond down to the ground or rope it down if you have to. And then that little section that stays behind, we call that the boot. And apparently, Dave, where are you from? Let me know and I'll tell everybody. Because apparently that's a broader term than I really understood. I thought it was just an LA thing. Where was I going? So the shaving of the pineapple, when you do that, you basically, with the handsaw, you're saying, look, I know from here out is mostly dead, so this is a great spot to cut it. I'm going to minimize damage to this palm. And then if the client says, oh yeah, can you shave the pineapple? Now you're basically saying, I'm going to open up the vascular system of this whole entire head of this palm so disease can come in everywhere. And I think we're going to talk about the injections in a second. So that's the treatment plan that I was telling you about. I want to show you a video, and it's a video I pulled off of Instagram. And I want to be really clear on something, that this is an arborist in, I think they're in Italy, and it's a company that does a ton of palms. And to my understanding, the Fusarium issue isn't a big deal in Italy. So it's almost taken for granted that every palm there gets a shaved pineapple. And that's why I pulled this video, because he's doing a really good job of showing what the process is. And I don't think he's actually doing anything wrong in this case. But if you bring him over here, if he wanted to come work at my company, I'd say that's great, but you're not shaving any pineapples. So, oh, geez Louise, that's noisy. So he's using the chainsaw and kind of undercutting up the trunk. And then as he's taking the fronds, you can see there's fresh wood that he's leaving behind. He's cutting off full green fronds. And he's got some specialty tools. So those are the Swiss grippers right there. You can kind of see it in action. I'm glad that one person brought it up. I don't remember who it was, but Mike. Yeah, I'm glad Mike brought it up. So that's what the pineapple looks like when it's done. I would see that here in Los Angeles and say, what a shame. They totally opened up that palm to so many fungal issues. But this is where I say you got to know the issues in your area to know if it's something that you really need to be concerned about. I see date palms dying from Fusarium all over LA. So I know that at our company, at least, we don't do any of the shaving of the pineapple anymore. We used to. Now I know better, and we don't. Also, it's hard to make it look really good. You can tell that person on Instagram, this was not their first rodeo. So it's easier for us to just be like, look, I don't want it to look bad. Also, I don't want to kill your palm. Also, I don't want to charge you a bunch of extra money that we don't need to charge you. So let's talk about the injections. I saw somebody had asked if there's a particular fungistat that you should be using on Canary Island date palms. And the answer is yes and no. Date palms that get Fusarium are going to die. But through trunk injections, and you can do this through a ground application, but that's not always an option for us in Los Angeles. So we're really promoting it on as a trunk injection, and that's works for most cases. So it's 3 different treatments that are kind of flip-flopped back and forth. And what you're doing is right now, kind of in the fall, doing a fungicide, and you're going to do ArborJet uses a product. I know TreeStuff sells it, so that's why I'm bringing up ArborJet. They sell Propizol. Propizol is designed to address fungal issues. I'm not going to say that it kills fungus or stops fungus, because it doesn't do that in the trees that we have in our area, but it does a good job of suppressing some or many of the symptoms that fungus can cause. So in the fall, we're doing Propizol trunk injection. And then in the spring, we're just doing a fertilizer trunk injection. And that could, ArborJet has the PalmJet fertilizer, but there's other ways to fertilize palms. And if that works good for you in your area, for your clients, then you would do that in springtime. And then next fall, a fungicide again, but we don't want to use Propizol every single time. So we're going to go with just a straight phosphorus, which ArborJet has the PhosphaJet product, which is basically just liquid phosphorus. There's nothing else in it. It's blue like Windex. It's really easy to identify. And then the next spring we'll do fertilizer. So it goes, you can do PhosphaJet in the fall, fertilizer in the spring, Propizol in the fall, fertilizer in the spring, then PhosphaJet in the fall. So it's always fertilizer in the spring, and then flip-flopping fungicides in the fall. Flip-flopping fungicides in the fall. That's the idea. And so if you look at that, doing the trunk injection twice a year for a period of years, it's a small revenue stream, which is important for your business. If it doesn't work for the business, then it doesn't matter if it works for the tree. It has to work for the business. It isn't extremely time consuming to do trunk injections on a palm. You can typically drill one hole, put the long needle in there, and it'll uptake everything. It's going to push everything up to the top. Once it gets into that vascular bundle, if you think of the inside of a palm trunk, it's oftentimes referred to as a bundle of straws that goes straight to the top, and it doesn't have as much kind of action going on the way a woody tree would have. So that injection method, if you stick with it, what you're doing is you're stretching out the time that the client will have that palm. And I can't tell you like you're going to buy them 5 extra years. We don't know the answer to that. It would be great to do like a huge study where you have a street that has 200 Canary Island date palms that are all in various stages of the disease. And then we just treat every other palm and see what happens. But that's such a big, that's a big ask. Maybe I need to talk to the, I'm drawing a blank on the organization that provides the funding for tree studies. But Henry Peralta is saying, I believe it's more educating the client because it really comes down to them and the budget. And you're totally right. What I can tell you is if you can see the very beginning signs of Fusarium in their palm, or maybe even an adjacent palm, it could be wise to start this pruning. Sorry, I just said pruning. It could be wise to start this injection now because it's not super expensive. So you're right, the budget matters, but we're not asking them for $1,000 a year. And if you're in the neighborhood, I know you can bring that price down to, I don't want to tell you how to price it, but you can bring it down to something that's very palatable for most homeowners. So let's see, Mason is saying PalmJet is great. He injects hundreds of palms a year, and PalmJet from ArborJet is the best preventative maintenance as a yearly routine. Absolutely. And I think we need to do it more at my company. All right, let's move on. We're getting down to the end here, folks. Maybe 10 or 20 more minutes. Little color change on the presentation. Okay, here we go. So everything we've talked about so far, I would refer to as mild when compared to what I'm about to share with you. It's mild because there's nothing fast acting in any of this. And it's something that you can just walk around any neighborhood in LA and you can see signs of all this stuff that I'm talking about everywhere. The thing I'm about to show is it's super rare and it's super scary and has a crazy name. Thialaviopsis paradoxa. Thialaviopsis paradoxa. You don't have to remember that one. I just think it's such a cool word. I wrote it in big black letters because it is also referred to as black rot, and it causes this, or I shouldn't say it causes, it is believed by many people to be a primary causal factor of a situation called sudden crown drop. And that's where the entire head of a Canary Island date palm will just fall onto the ground. And this isn't something that happens every single year. And in fact, I will tell you that I've never seen it in all of my work in Los Angeles. I didn't take this photo. I believe this photo was taken by Don Hodel. I pulled it off of the UCANR website. And you can tell it's kind of a blurry picture because it was taken a while ago. I've only seen photos of it happening a few times. And Tom said extremely common here. Tom, where are you from? So we know where here is. So I'm going to share with you what I think that I know about sudden crown drop. Because it's a new thing, it isn't something that I have a ton of experience with, but it's such a scary thing that I put attention into it because I want to know, like, I'm sending employees out to climb these things. Thank you. Tom is in Florida, so it sounds like it's more common in Florida. And as we get into my explanation of what's going on, I think it might help us to understand why it's more prevalent in Florida. But I'm sending employees out to climb these palms, and some of these palms are huge and frankly not welcoming places to be. Jason Dudek mentioned an hour ago that there's a bunch of animals that live up there, and it's true. The tops of these palms are filled with roaches and snakes and spiders, birds, raccoons, squirrels, rats, skunks, possums, and just the list goes on. And they're just living up there. They're just chilling. They're doing their thing. Scorpions can be up there too. We don't have scorpions in Los Angeles, but I know that there are parts of the country where you can find scorpions really commonly up in the head of the palm. And then one thing I didn't share with you, and I should have brought a photo of it. I should have put a photo in here. The base of the frond has spikes on it that are about almost 12 inches long. And this is a morbid way to explain it, but I think it really paints the picture. If you needed a biodegradable weapon to commit a murder, this would be this spike. You cut it off, it will puncture, it'll go right through your arm. It'll do a lot of damage. And this is part of why we charge a lot of money to do a Canary Island date palm, because I want to tell my guys, you're not in a production mode right now. I know I'm always pushing, like, we got to get back at a certain time. We got to get to the next job. We always overbid Canary Island date palms. We give the employee a bonus to go up there. And it's our way of saying, we want you to take your time because you are at an extreme level of risk when you go up there. And I'll tell them to take, because I don't want them up there with a chainsaw, just, going willy-nilly when their climbing line is going up and over it. So sometimes some of the guys will bring hand pruners, and they'll prune those long thorns. They're really like modified leaves. They're not fully thorns, but they'll prune those off if they need to reach through and cut off a seed cluster. There's no reason sticking your arm through there where it's going to get punctured and like fully impaled. So anyways, this black rot is a soil-borne fungus. And that's weird because if you look, let me see if I can go back here. Oh no, we went too far. We want this one right. Where are we here? That one right there. If you look at the, forget it, the head of the palm is not in the soil. And this fungus is a soil-borne fungus. So there's kind of like, well, what the heck is going on here? So to my knowledge, I saw somebody in the comments said this can also happen. Tom Stuckland said affects Washingtonia. Those are the Mexican fan palms. I haven't seen it in Mexican fan palms, by the way. I've only heard of it happening in Canary Island date palms. So Tom, I definitely don't doubt you. And so everyone, you can sort of like put a little asterisk by my bullet point there. But the soil-borne fungus is, you know, the black rot, it's something that's common, regular to see in the soil. So what's going on here? Let me see if I can show a common trait that's been noticed by observers that have seen multiple date palms that have had the whole head break off. And I'm going to keep the volume down and I'm just going to describe it. So we're looking up at a palm and then you look below and you can see some green. That's actually a fig plant that a bird pooped a seed up there and the fig plant kind of latched on and it just started rooting into the head of the palm. And the roots are kind of like wrapping around. You can't see this part from this angle, but in a very similar way. And this next part I just put in the slideshow because I think it's cool. The pine tree is actually parasitically grabbing onto, living on the palm, but the pine isn't what matters. This is cool. Tom, yes, definitely send me pictures, by the way. This pine growing on the palm is cool, but if you go up to the top, there's a fig tree growing into the palm, and this is what that looks like. So the previous palm, it was a fruiting fig, which is a ficus. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow when I get, if any of my crew sees this, but whatever, the fruiting fig that I can't remember right now. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember it. Someone will put it in the comments. But this photo right here, this is Ficus microcarpa, which used to be called Ficus nitida. A laurel leaf ficus is one of the more common names. And if you look just to the left, you see like this gray S thing, and then above it, up farther to the left, there's a diagonal line. Those are massive roots of that ficus tree that are penetrating into and kind of around the palm. And here's what me and many arborists think is going on here. The fungus, the Elevopsis paradoxa or whatever it was called, the fungus needs soil to live in. The ficus, they'll grow anywhere. Like I've seen them in people's chimneys. Thank you, Ficus carica. Oh, thank you, Kunyu George Zhang. Ficus carica is the fruiting fig. But these ficuses, they'll grow anywhere in LA. If there's a little bit of humidity, that's all it takes for their seeds to root. So what we think is happening is that a bird poops a seed. The seeds are really small. It's a fig seed. And if you've ever eaten a fig Newton and you kind of chewed on those crunchy little seeds in there, you know how tiny they are. A parrot pooped a seed in here. The ficus started to to root. There was enough humidity. And if you've been out hiking in a rocky area, like where there's massive boulders, and you'll see like lichen will form, and then a little tiny pine tree will just start to grow in there. And then the existence of like the lichen plus a little bit of debris, and now that little tree is providing some shade, and it'll actually create like soil out of nothing, like not out of nothing, but on top of a rock. And I think the same thing's happening here, that these roots are creating like a little micro a microcosm, a micro ecosystem, and creating soil pockets in the head of the palm. And then that creates a place for the black rot fungus to host itself. Oops, hold on. So anyways, that's what I think is going on here. And so I look at my job as my job is twofold. Well, I'm the owner of the company, so it's like many fold. But in this regard, there's two big things going on here. I'm a consultant advising the tree owners on how to manage their trees, but I'm also a salesperson selling tree work. And when I'm selling work, I'm trying to think of like what's best for my company, make sure I get a fair price and I'm not screwing the client over by charging them too much. But I'm also looking out for my crew and making sure I don't put them into a situation that any of us are going to regret later. And we all have situations where we regret, where it's like a challenging client, or a tree was underbid and we regret doing the job because we thought it was going to be a lot easier and it wasn't. I'm talking about a whole head of a palm coming down with the climber in it. So I'm trying to think of like, what are ways I can kind of suss out the trees that might be more likely candidates for the entire head falling off. So let's start by, as the consultants, before you sell the job, see if you notice plants growing up there. Do you see, there's a gentleman named Colin that said, I heard he doesn't even like the crew. That's one of my employees, and he's not wrong. Anyways, so when we're selling the jobs, when we're consulting with clients and talking to them, I'm also looking for what kind of plant growth is growing up there. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's common to see other plants growing up in Canary Island date palms. What I want to know is how much of it is there. And the more kind of plant life you see up there, the more kind of red flags should be going off in your head. I put that little spider icon there because that's like your spider sense is tingling and telling you there might be something wrong here. We need to look at the health of the overall plant because that relates to the structural stability of the overall plant. As a general guideline with trees, we know that the healthier trees are also stronger trees, and the same is true with palms. It's rarer for strong plants to fail. It's rarer. That doesn't mean it can't happen. So look at the individual fronds and then use that to sort of help you make a decision about how that might be impacting the strength of the structure that we're going to be climbing. And then observe the overall health of the crown, because just like the individual leaves, you might have a couple of bad leaves, but you also might have a crown that looks like this one, where there's something going on there. Like the whole system is shutting down, and that tells us that there's an increased likelihood of a structural weakness. You can see it here as well. This is one, I put this picture on purpose because the last photo, which is this one, we would all look at that and go, that is a piece of garbage. And if you can't make that push out some new growth, you need to get that out of here ASAP, because who would want that in their yard? Not only is it an increased risk of the whole thing falling over, it just isn't pretty. This is one where I think it's a little borderline, where some people would say, it looks fine. Let's get a climber up there and cut the dead fronds out of it. And it kind of looks like it's just trying to push out some new growth. But what I see here is a suppressed crown head, a suppressed palm crown, or a suppressed palm head. I know that it should be a lot wider. It should have a lot more healthy fronds on it. It should have like, I mean, really, it should have like 200 healthy fronds, but most of them in LA will have like 75 to 100. This one probably has like 30 to 40 healthy fronds on it. And so that's a huge signal to me that this is an increased risk for the workers that might be working on the palm. Here's another one that I would say most people would say is super beautiful. And if we took those dead fronds out of there, you have like 180 degrees of healthy fronds, but we should have more than 180 degrees. There should be downward hanging green fronds. So this is one that in sales and consulting mode, I'm already starting to get little spider senses on this one, and maybe talking to the client about, let's consider starting some trunk injections on this palm. So this is one where if we had it looking like that and we had a bunch of plants growing underneath it, which if you look on the lower left of the head of the palm under the brown, you can actually see leaves growing under there. So there is stuff growing up inside that palm. And so even though this one looks pretty, it's signaling to me that there are some potential concerns here. So I'm putting all of this, I'm saying the consultants and the production crew that are coming out, the sales team and the production crew that's coming out to do the work, they should be doing all of these things. Really what should happen is that the consultant assesses the tree first, and then they are providing to the crew a fully fleshed out kind of preventative plan, like, hey, the palm in the front appears to be in amazing condition, so you guys can go ahead and set a line in that one. But the palm near the side of the house by the driveway appears to be declining, so wait until the lift gets there and then do that one with the lift or something like that. That's what should happen, but we all know that those consultants are humans. Those humans can make mistakes. They can get distracted by the client on the job site, and they can just oversee things, overlook things sometimes. And so each production employee, I believe, should operate as like a junior consultant, and you're consulting for yourself as the client, if you think about it that way. And this is what I did when I was starting out as a young budding arborist, is I would go out there to get ready to climb a tree, and I would kind of walk around like, what would I have told this customer if I was the one that met, because I like to pretend I knew more than all the sales guys at the companies I work for. And so I kind of went and looked at the tree like, hey, did you notice this big massive hole on the backside of the tree? And you can hear in their voice sometimes when they didn't notice it. So the production crew should go out there with that in mind. And that's really good training for when the day comes that you don't want to be production crew anymore. You already got some junior consultant training in. So the other big thing, and this is one that I don't see a lot of reference to, but I have observed on my own, is that tilted head that is really subtle on this photo, and I drew the big red line to help you see it more clearly. That tilted head, I'm very confident in my research and the other arborists that I've spoken with, that's an indicator of a weakness. We usually see that in palms that are starting to decline, and some people believe that it's an indicator that it might have the black rot fungus already starting in it, and that it's weakening down below, and it's sort of like the head is crumpling down onto that weaker section. So now palms generally are going to grow perfectly straight if they're in a wide open area. Some trees will really lean, even in open sunshine, they'll lean towards the sunshine or something like that. But most date palms, Canary Island date palms especially, will grow very straight, vertical. If there's obstructions down below, maybe it's planted close to a building or another tree, it'll grow crooked as it gets away from that, and then it'll do a self-corrected lean and then grow vertical. So when you're assessing trees to sell a job or to advise someone on the safety of the tree or to climb the tree, look for that tilted head. Look for sculpted pineapples. Here's one that was very recently sheared, and a lot of times you'll see old shearing marks that have gone gray, but you can tell that it has happened many times in the past, and that should be a trigger to what's going on. This particular palm right here doesn't have as many fronds as I believe it should have. Now, I don't know if that's because they cut off dead ones only, and what's left behind is a suppressed head that is shrinking because of the reduced health of the palm, or was it all perfectly healthy and fine and they just cut off more because that's what the client wanted? There's not a way to know that, but I think this one also, it looks to me like it's tilting a little bit at the top. So here's a look from the drone at one of those palms that has that tilted head. It kind of leans to the left. And if you look down to the right, there's another tree. I can't tell what that one is, but that's growing into the head of the palm. And the other thing, you see the road on the right-hand side of the screen right there. So that's right next to the parkway. If we need to work on this palm, probably recommending a removal. And if they don't want to do that, then we're going to prune the dead fronds and seed pods out of it. But if we do that, there's no way in hell I'm sending one of my climbers up there when we know we can get an aerial lift and get up there with the lift. And if it is 120 feet tall, I can tell you that in Los Angeles, aerial lifts are rare. I know a lot of you right now are saying, oh, we got a massive lift. It could do 120, no problem. I got a buddy that has one, or we'll rent one. It's really rare in LA for tree companies to even have a lift. And if they have one, it doesn't go 120 feet up. So I'm going to tell the client we're going to bring out the crane for a couple hours, and there's a minimum charge for that. And I would, if this needed to be climbed, pruned, and it couldn't be accessed with a lift, then I'm charging them for the client. And if they don't want to pay that price, I'm not going to drop down my price and make a climber go up there when I'm smart enough to know that this could lead to disaster. So here's an obvious, really bad one. The fronds are actually shortening, but you can see it's kind of curving up at the top. There's the big red line to make sure. That red line doesn't exist in nature, though. You have to superimpose that yourself. So lift it or crane it if you can. Make sure the client understands that not only are you providing the service to them, you're also making sure that it's being done in a way that protects the people that you work with. And then when you're out on the job site and you're throwing that line to do an SRT ascent, if for any reason, just grab someone and say, hey, how's this look to you? Does the placement over the top look good to you? And does the palm itself look good to you? What if the two of us or three of us hang on it and make sure that it can hold itself? Some palms are too small to have three people really hanging on it, but a Canary Island date palm sure can handle that. And I think 3 moderately experienced tree workers, or 2 even, just pulling, not necessarily bouncing on it, but just pulling on a line and lifting their feet up, they'll know when it doesn't feel right, and they can let go and scatter if that head is going to come down. Again, I've never heard of that happening on a job site when people are about to climb the palm, but theoretically it could happen, and it's better to protect yourself. Finally, the big lesson I want to share, this is a palm I drive by almost every single day, and they pruned the bejesus out of it. So basically, just don't do that. Don't be a dork. Don't let your clients' desire to save money be the thing that puts you in a position where you're damaging the plants that you're working on, and you're putting yourself and your coworkers at risk. It's just not worth it. And that is all I got. So I will stay here for a few minutes. I know that Kayla is going to come back. He probably has some announcements, and there's going to be a test that you can get some CEUs on. But I'm happy to answer questions if you have any live or in the feed. I don't know if Kayla's there.
Sorry, I keep muting myself and forgetting about it.
Oh.
So I think you hit a lot of things. Some of these are very specific. Somebody is asking, what about Ganoderma? I don't know anything about palm trees, so...
Yeah, thank you. I was following along, but I didn't see that question. Yeah, you can get Ganoderma in a palm, and I don't think there's any special considerations. It needs to be treated like any other situation. It's a decay fungus, so you need to approach it the same way you would approach a tree. Try to assess the remaining strength of the parts that aren't affected yet, and if it's too decayed, then don't climb it. Get the crane out if you have to.
I also have a couple questions about how you deal with all of the animals that you found up there.
Okay, so I have, there was a moment about 10 or 15 minutes ago where Colin said, I heard he doesn't even like the crew. The technique that I developed to make sure that I'm protected from the rats and squirrels and spiders is to grow my company big enough that I never have to climb a Canary Island date palm ever again in my life. And I have accomplished that goal. And the crew does it. The truth is, be ready to run. Usually I can't think of a time when the crew has bailed out of a date palm because of animals. I think that might have happened once with bees. Colin, I saw Ricardo here. They might be able to chime in and remind me if I'm wrong. But one of the big advantages of going up SRT versus going up on spikes is that if an angry raccoon comes down at you, you can just, kick away from the palm and bail, and you'll be on the ground in, 2 seconds or something like that. So that's all you can really do. I guess you could wear like some protective armor or something like that, but I'm going to be honest, it's California, it's hot. You're doing a hard thing climbing, 50 or 100 feet up, carrying equipment and all that kind of stuff. So most people are going up in a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt, and that's about it. Pants too, I guess.
Sorry, Jason Dudek says he eats the animals he finds.
No, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not eating.
Oh yeah, that's true. What I've got somebody asking about the picture behind you.
That's a painting that my old roommate after college painted, and it's called "I Can't Be a Superhero. My Pants Are Too Tight." His name is Eric Bell. You can look him up on Instagram, and there's actually a poster of Michael Jordan slam dunking a basketball, a very famous photo of him, and the painting is painted over the top of that photo. So he gave it to me as a gift, and he's a very well accomplished artist, and I like his work. So there it is.
I've got a question on YouTube. I know you kind of touched on it about are all palm types male and female?
I am not going to answer that question because I don't know. As soon as you put the word all in there, that means all of them in the world. And I am not as well traveled as I would like to be. I have a limited experience working on palms in Southern California, and I know the palms here are pretty darn good. There might be some out there that are both male and female. So I don't know.
All right. I think we have. Oh yes. Does a female need a male in order to produce fruit?
Yes, yeah. There's bees and pollen. They're doing the whole, like, the normal flower thing. And conceivably, if they're close enough, I think it can happen with the wind. But when I ran down the list of all the animals and the wildlife that we find up there, bees is the biggest one, and they go crazy for palm flowers, and they'll just be up there by the thousands and thousands. So yeah, it's definitely a standard pollen interaction as we tend to think of it.
Gotcha. When you make your guys risk life and limb climbing up the trees, you mentioned not using spikes. If you don't have the Swiss grippers, then you're stuck with just climbing it regularly. Can you talk a little bit about how you access the tree with regular climbing systems?
Yeah. I think at the beginning of our kind of foray into working on palms, we had like a kit on our truck that was like specialized tools that we were really using just for the palm, for palms. We had puncture-proof arm chaps that a syringe wouldn't go through it, and they also had a neck guard thing that no one ever used, but I provided it. And we had like certain straps that I had a special lanyard that I used that was basically like 3 lanyards. And over time, I've noticed that our crew has adapted to just using what I would call a normal SRT climbing system. So we are, if possible, hand throwing or big shotting over the top of the palm, trying to get it centered or really close to center with the throw line. One of the biggest tips I can share is that at the beginning, when you think of like, if this is the target you're trying to hit, you shoot, you throw, if it's a tree, you're targeting throwing just like a foot beyond that. So it'll kind of go and then zip down to the bottom, right? And the throw weight will pull it down. There's a ton of friction at the top of a palm. And so what was happening is we would throw it up and then it would go over and then it would just stop. And we'd all be standing there looking at it. And sometimes it wouldn't come back down because the top of the fronds can have like this little notch in them. And so you pull it, and as you're pulling that, 12-ounce weight or whatever size weight you're using, it was actually settling down deeper, and then you just have to go get another throw line. And so we were trying to counteract this by having custom made 20 or 24-ounce throw weights made. And that works for some of the stronger guys on our crew, but not me. I could not throw a 24-ounce weight 60 feet up. Maybe I could do it on a 40-footer when I was on the crew all the time. But so what we figured out is that you don't throw over the palm, you throw past the palm. And so let me do it like this. You're going to stand back further, not throwing up and down. You're throwing kind of across the top of it, and you're really aiming way over here. So you throw it, and then the throw line kind of just kisses the top of the palm and keeps going. And then at the right moment, it slows down and it angles down. So instead of sliding down, it's just folding down. And then you can just walk over and grab it, tie your climbing line on, and pull it up. But that requires you to have the ability to stand back far enough and throw it far enough. And that could be a long, you could be standing 30 or 40 feet back and you're trying to throw it 40 feet beyond. And this is Los Angeles. There's power lines and cars and pedestrians and small properties and skylights and Spanish tile roofs, all these things that are breakable. And so that's where we got into at our company. We have a drone and we'll fly up and we can literally fly out and over and then back it up, bring it down and just drop it. And it's very like, if you see it done and it works, which it usually does, unless we're doing a live demonstration, then it never works. But when we're doing it, it's very like low key. It's not like exciting. There's no excitement at all. It just goes up real slowly and then brings it down real slowly. So if you're not doing a lot of them, you're probably not going to invest the time, energy, and all that to do the drone. But throw lining them and big shotting them is totally normal.
There is.
Oh,
oh,
1 second. Sorry, Kale. That's just to get the throw line. Then you got to climb up. And so most of our guys are just pulling up whatever 200-foot climbing line they have in their bag. You know, a Blue Moon variant or like a Kern Master of some sort, and then just putting on a rope runner, a rope wrench, a Kimbo, whatever SRT device they like. For me, it would be a zigzag with the chicane on it, and just go up and get it done.
If you want to see footage of that, we did do a webinar maybe a couple years ago with Nick where he actually showed the drone process and a couple of the other processes. So there is more information about palms out there on our TreeStuff page or on our YouTube page. Ricardo Vasquez says that he doesn't want to come into work tomorrow.
And all right, I'll give him the day off. That's fine.
Okay. Otherwise, the link to the quiz is posted in the comments section down there. Take it. Please make sure that you have your ISA number correctly submitted in that. And when I submit that this month, then it should show up within, I think, 8 to 10 weeks is about how long it's taking the ISA right now. In your account. So once again, thank you, Nick, for doing this. Always love having you come out and help us with these things. So have a nice rest of the day out there in sunny California for us.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go out and get some pizza now. Thank you guys. I'm glad you all stuck around, and message me if you have an idea for a presentation you'd love me to do. I always like hearing that feedback from you guys. All right. Thank you.
Great.